In the past, an average employee could grit their teeth, save up, and at some point buy a home. Today, for an ordinary person, buying a house has become a dream in most places. So let me say this from the start. This crisis isn't an accident, and it didn't suddenly happen either. It's the natural outcome of a 30-40-year process that turned housing from a right to a financial product, combined with long periods of low interest rates, easy credit, and a steadily growing level of inequality. In this video, we're going to talk about the housing crisis that's shaking the whole world. We'll chase the question, how did we end up here? Some people say there isn't enough supply. Others say the real issue is financialization. Others say inequality eats everything. We'll go through all of it, one by one. But the most important point is this. If you don't understand the crisis, you can't talk about solutions, because a wrong diagnosis means the wrong medicine. So come on, let's rebuild this from the beginning. The same story is everywhere around me. People in their 30s, working, grinding, trying, but no house. They're drifting from one rental to the next. There's this question, my dad was a teacher and he bought a home, why can't I? There's that feeling, our parents bought, we couldn't. Some people say, my dad bought late too, so I don't want to dramatize it. But what you clearly see is this. Back then, even if it was late, it still happened. Now it's not late. Now people are talking about the possibility of never. And that difference is huge. And this isn't just a personal feeling, it's a global phenomenon. The OECD publishes housing price indices. Over the last 10 years, there have been serious increases in real terms, meaning even after adjusting for inflation. In some places, you hear numbers like 30% real growth. When you think about other places, 30% doesn't sound that bad. But here's the thing. In Europe, in developed countries, whose salary increased by 30% in real terms over the last 10 years? Very few. So even real growth already means wages can't keep up. And when you stretch that view from 10 years to 40 years, the trend becomes crystal clear. Housing prices have been rising faster than people's incomes worldwide. The pandemic period, 2019 to 2024, basically flipped the switch. Housing prices went crazy in many countries. If you open the charts, in a lot of them, the peak is 2022. In that window, one of the most extreme increases inside the OECD is Turkey. Between 2019 and 2024, the real increase in housing prices is said to be around 86%. That's an insane number. And think about it, real 86%. You can't just hide behind there's inflation anyway. Even after adjusting for inflation, it exploded. And of course, the crisis isn't limited to home prices. Rents went up too. In Turkey, rent is already a disaster. In big European cities, rent increases of 50 to 100% over the last decade have happened as well. But here's an interesting note. In many places, house prices have risen faster than rents, and that whispers something important. Housing isn't being bought only to live in anymore. It's being bought as an investment asset. Look, survey European mayors and ask, is housing affordable in your city? The answers are frightening. A serious share say it's unaffordable, and only a small minority say, yes, it's affordable. So it's not just a couple of cities have a problem. It's basically a common problem across European metropolises. In the US, the data is already very clear, because they've been collecting it for decades. In the 1980s, the median household income to the median home sale price is said to be around 3.5. Today, that ratio is said to be around 5.4. Housing flies up, income doesn't move at the same speed. Simple. So why? There are two main explanations. First, supply. Second, financialization plus inequality. Let's start with supply. The moment you say housing crisis, the favorite reflex of the liberal mindset kicks in. There aren't enough homes, bro. If we build more, we solve it. That argument is partially true. There are very few countries that can honestly say, we have enough housing supply. In the US, people talk about a shortage of millions of homes. In Europe, reports say, to solve the shortage, Europe needs to build 1.5 million new homes each year. So yes, there's supply pressure. but the reasons behind the supply problem differ from country to country. In the US and Europe, a major issue is regulation and permitting. Zoning restrictions, licensing processes, neighborhood resistance. They even have a word for it: NIMBY, not in my backyard. Basically, everyone says, housing is expensive, there's a crisis. But when a new project comes to their neighborhood, they object. Traffic will get worse. It'll block sunlight. It'll destroy green space. The right to object is so strong that housing production can get completely stuck, and in some places, zoning assigns huge portions of residential land to single-family homes, which blocks dense housing. Result, supply doesn't grow. And then there's the 2008 crisis. In many places, the construction sector took such a hit that it couldn't recover for a long time. Before 2008, there was already a real estate bubble. When it popped, construction shrank hard. There are also productivity issues, cost increases, labor issues. Supply became less responsive to price. You can't just say, prices are rising, let me build more, because capacity, permits, costs, and uncertainty all get in the way. Okay, supply matters, but here's the key point. If it were only a supply issue, it would be harder to explain why similar crises appeared everywhere at the same time. Countries have different zoning rules, different demographics, different planning systems, and yet the same story keeps repeating. So there has to be something more systemic. And this is where the main answer comes in: the financialization of housing. You've probably heard one name in this context, Yanis Varoufakis. He likes explaining it, but it's not only his thesis, it's a broader framework. Housing turned from a right into a financial product. This transformation happened step by step. Think back to the Thatcher era. Social housing was sold to the workers who were already living in those homes. In the moment, workers were happy. I became a homeowner. But in the long run, their children and grandchildren entered the same market as the propertyless because the social housing stock shrank and the public mechanism of affordable housing weakened. Today, those grandchildren can't buy homes. With that transformation, homes became investment vehicles. Imagine you're a wealthy person. You have money. You want to protect it. Where do you put it? You can buy government bonds, safe, but the yield may be low. You can buy stocks, risky. You can hold foreign currency. You can buy gold, or you can buy real estate. What does real estate promise? It's tangible. It's there. You can touch it. And there's a strong belief that it will appreciate over time. Plus, for global wealth, a home isn't just a home, it's a vault, a place to park your wealth. And that creates a striking image: bank vaults in the sky. In New York, London, Paris, Istanbul, there are ultra-luxury residences sitting empty because the goal isn't living, the goal is parking. Money sits there. You don't even have to live in the city. Globalization accelerated this. A rich person from one country buys property in another country's city. London is the classic example. Russian oligarchs, Gulf capital, royal families. Stories like these turn housing from a local shelter into a global wealth storage asset. Then one more thing got layered on top: securitization. In the 1990s, the financial world discovered something. A mortgage is basically a sellable stream of debt. Before, a bank would issue a 30-year mortgage and keep that loan on its books. The borrower pays monthly, it's the bank's asset. Then they said, why are we holding this debt? Let's bundle it and sell it. They pooled mortgages, packaged them, and sold them as mortgage-backed securities. What happened as a result? The bank no longer feels the risk the same way because it sells the loan. So what does it do? It issues more loans. Credit becomes abundant. Interest rates fall. More people take mortgages. On paper, it looks amazing. Buying a home got easier. But here's the big paradox. If credit is abundant, but supply can't expand at the same pace, that flood of credit inflates demand and pushes prices up. Credit increases access, but it also increases the price. And in the end, that access disappears again, often in a worse form. The best explanation is the auction example. There's a vase, 5 people, everyone has $100. The price can't go above $100 because nobody can pay more. Then a banker arrives and says, I gave each of you a $1,000 credit line. Suddenly, the vase can go up to $1,100. Same vase, same buyers, the only difference is borrowing power. Who won? The bank won, because it put you in debt. The seller won because they sold for more. Who lost? The buyer, because they paid more and got indebted. That's basically what happens in housing markets. And you can see the same logic in U.S. university tuition. As financing becomes easier, tuition rises. Even if quality stays the same, prices inflate because the system knows you'll borrow and pay me, then you'll carry the debt for years. So financialization didn't truly make things easier. Over 30-40 years, it turned people into long-term debtors and inflated prices. Then 2008 hit because securitization had spread everywhere. The system collapsed. So what happened after 2008? Central banks pumped money into markets. It's often said that the Fed's balance sheet went from around $900 billion before 2008 to multiple trillions, exceeding $9 trillion during post-pandemic expansion periods. With quantitative easing, massive liquidity entered the system. But the key question is, where did that money go? To ordinary people? To productive investment? To real economic expansion? Critical narratives say it mostly went into financial assets and asset markets, company stocks, insurance and finance, real estate, and that inflated asset prices. Since 2008, the general trend has been rising asset prices, stocks up, gold up, real estate up. For ordinary people, unreachability grows. This is where people like Gary Stevenson frame it like this. You go to a supermarket and only coffee got more expensive, then you say something happened to coffee, a supply issue, demand issue, a shortage. But if everything in the supermarket got more expensive, that's no longer a coffee problem. That's a system problem. Housing is like that. If there's a housing crisis everywhere, if people in every major city struggle to buy, if children can't do what their parents did, then something systemic is happening. And one of the main engines of that system is inequality. Because when the rich have too much money, they can't physically spend it all. There's a limit. After a point, you have to save and accumulate. You buy assets, you store wealth, you buy real estate. As inequality grows, the excess money rich people have to park grows too. That money flows into assets. Asset prices rise. Ordinary people get pushed out further. The gap widens. The cycle feeds itself. And here's the painful irony. When you say, my house price went up, I got richer, your children might end up poorer than you, because the entry gate is closing. Now let's look at other structural factors in Europe. Europe had a strong tradition of social housing. The state or municipalities built housing and rented it out at affordable prices. That did two things. It protected the right to housing and it reduced purchase demand in the market, because not everyone lived under the pressure of, I must buy a home or I'm doomed. That reduced price pressure. But after the 1980s, social housing declined in many places. Some claims suggest that over the last decade, the share of social housing in Europe fell, meaning public stock eroded. Tourism and short-term rentals, Airbnb, also inflated demand in some cities. Barcelona is the famous example. People protested tourists, basically telling them to leave, because homes that locals would live in turned into Airbnb units. When you can earn 2,000 to 3,000 euros a month from tourists, renting to a normal resident becomes irrational. That pushes rents and prices up. At this point, you might think, then there should be a crisis everywhere. But there's an interesting exception, Japan. In Japan, homes prices don't skyrocket the same way. In some periods, they even decline. Why? One, it's often said that homes are treated more like cars, depreciating assets. As buildings age, their value falls. Some narratives mention assumptions like a 22-year lifespan and banks treating older houses as having nearly zero collateral value, focusing on the land instead of the building. Two, because it's an earthquake country and regulations change, old buildings are seen as unsafe. Demand shifts toward new construction. 3. Zoning constraints can be more flexible in certain ways, so supply can expand more easily. 4. There are stories about tax mechanisms that punish keeping land empty, pushing owners to build. There's also the ghost houses phenomenon. People don't demolish unused houses because demolition would increase the land tax, so the house just sits there, unused but standing. 5. Inheritance tax can be high, which can push properties back into the market rather than being held forever. Result, supply can outpace demand, or the price dynamics stay different. A small note, there are also people who argue housing didn't become less affordable. In some places, it became more affordable, especially in the US with the claim, "Don't look at price to income, look at mortgage rates." They argue in 1985, 30-year fixed mortgage rates were around 12 to 13%. Today, in some periods, you see 6 to 7%. Back then, even if home prices were lower, the interest burden made the total payment much higher. Today, with lower rates, in some periods, the total burden can look more manageable. It's not a completely ridiculous argument, but the price-to-income ratio still feels like a more direct indicator of how hard it is to enter the market, because the down payment problem, access to credit problem, and borrowing capacity problem are real. Home ownership rates also tell a story. A 2024 figure like 56% is often mentioned. With post-2006 data collected under EU standards, people say it peaked around 61% in 2014 and then fell, suggesting home ownership is declining. Pre-2006 data is messy because methodology changed. You can find charts showing 70% in the early 2000s and then suddenly dropping in 2006, which would imply everyone sold their homes overnight, which is obviously nonsense. So it's hard to do clean historical comparisons. But we can logically say this: in the past, people could become homeowners through informal mechanisms. So what's the solution? I'm not going to write a full prescription in this video because solutions are ideological and political choices. But I can say this: just build more homes isn't enough. If you keep turning what you build into a financial vault, if speculation keeps swallowing it up, if inequality keeps feeding it, the problem returns. A realistic solution set usually includes increasing supply, yes, but intelligently, rationalizing zoning and production processes, strengthening social and affordable rental housing, discouraging empty homes and speculative holding, making access to financing fair and sustainable, and not expecting a permanent solution without addressing income distribution and inequality. Now, my question for you is, what's the situation in your city? What's rent like? How does the home price to wage ratio feel to you? Is buying a home still realistic for a normal person, or has it become pure fantasy? Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, feel free to share, like, and subscribe.